In a world where royal protocol dictates every breath, every glance, every carefully measured step, sometimes the most powerful moments come from the heart, not the handbook. On May 6th, 2023, as millions watch King Charles III coronation unfold with centuries-old tradition, one unexpected gesture from Duchess Sophie would capture hearts worldwide and remind us all that behind the crowns and ceremonies, the most profound acts of humanity often happen in plain sight. What started as a simple moment of kindness would spark a global conversation about compassion, breaking barriers, and the true meaning of service. This is the story of how one woman's instinct to reach out changed not just a single life, but touched the hearts of people across continents, proving that sometimes the smallest gestures create the biggest waves. The morning air in London carried an electric energy that only comes once in a generation. May 6th, 2023, had arrived with all the pomp and ceremony that the British monarchy could muster. After 70 years of waiting, King Charles III would finally receive his crown, and the world was watching. Every street corner buzzed with excitement as people from all walks of life gathered to witness history in the making. Sophie Rhys-Jones, the Duchess of Edinburgh, had awakened before dawn in her suite at Buckingham Palace. The weight of the day ahead pressed on her shoulders, not from her own royal duties, but from the knowledge that millions of eyes would scrutinize every moment of the ceremony. She had been part of the royal family for over 2 decades, but coronations were different. They carried the weight of 1,000 years of tradition, where every gesture mattered, and every protocol had been refined through centuries of practice. Standing before her mirror, Sophie adjusted her elegant navy dress and matching hat. The outfit had been chosen months in advance, every detail coordinated with the other female members of the royal family to ensure harmony in photographs that would grace history books for generations. But as she looked at her reflection, her mind wandered to the faces she would see today. Not just the dignitaries and world leaders, but the ordinary people who had traveled from across the Commonwealth to witness this moment. The Duchess had always possessed a unique quality among the royals. While others focused on protocol and procedure, Sophie had developed a reputation for noticing the individual stories within the crowd. Perhaps it came from her background before marrying Prince Edward, when she worked in public relations and understood the importance of genuine human connection. Or maybe it was simply her nature to see beyond the ceremonial surface to the real emotions underneath. As her lady-in-waiting helped with final preparations, Sophie reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She remembered her wedding day in 1999, when she had felt overwhelmed by the sudden transition from private citizen to public figure. The learning curve had been steep, filled with moments of uncertainty and the constant awareness that every action would be analyzed and interpreted by media and public alike. But over the years, Sophie had found her rhythm within the royal framework. She had discovered that the most meaningful moments often happened between the formal events, a quiet conversation with a veteran at a memorial service, comforting a child at a hospital visit, or simply making eye contact with someone in a crowd who needed to feel seen. These small interactions had become her specialty, though they rarely made headlines. The coronation planning had been underway for months, with every detail orchestrated to perfection. Sophie had attended numerous rehearsals, walking through Westminster Abbey again and again until every step felt natural. The seating arrangements had been planned with diplomatic precision, ensuring that each guest felt appropriately honored while maintaining the delicate balance of international relations. But despite all the preparation, Sophie knew that the most memorable moments often came unscripted. She had learned to trust her instincts while respecting the boundaries of royal protocol. It was a delicate balance that required constant awareness and quick judgment calls that could either enhance or detract from the dignity of the occasion. The car journey to Westminster Abbey gave Sophie a chance to observe the crowds lining the streets. Thousands of people had camped overnight, many traveling from distant countries to be part of this historic moment. She could see the excitement on their faces, the flags waving, the children perched on their parents' shoulders to get a better view. Each person represented a story, a reason for being there, a personal connection to the monarchy that had drawn them to London on this special day. Inside Westminster Abbey, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. The ancient stones seemed to vibrate with the weight of history as guests filed into their designated seats. Sophie took her place among the royal family members, acutely aware of the television cameras that would capture every angle of the ceremony. She had long ago learned to maintain her composure under such scrutiny, but today felt different somehow. The guest list read like a who's who of global leadership. Presidents, prime ministers, royalty from around the world, and representatives from every corner of the Commonwealth had gathered under one roof. The diversity of cultures and traditions represented in the Abbey was remarkable, yet they were all united by this shared moment in British history. As the ceremony began with the traditional processions and ancient rituals, Sophie found herself scanning the faces around her. Each person present had their own perspective on this moment, their own understanding of what the coronation meant for their country and their future. The weight of responsibility was visible on King Charles's face as he prepared to take the oath that would bind him to a lifetime of service. The Archbishop of Canterbury's voice echoed through the Abbey as he began the ancient liturgy that had crowned British monarchs for nearly 1,000 years. Every word carried the weight of tradition. Every gesture had been performed countless times before. Yet for Sophie, watching her brother-in-law transform from prince to king, the moment felt entirely new and profound. The congregation represented more than just political alliances and diplomatic relationships. Sophie could see elderly veterans who had served the crown for decades, young Commonwealth representatives experiencing their first royal ceremony, religious leaders from various faiths, and community champions who had dedicated their lives to serving others. Each person had earned their place here through service and dedication. But it was in the spaces between the formal ceremony that Sophie's attention was truly caught. During the quieter moments, when the Archbishop spoke of service and dedication, she noticed a young girl in the congregation who seemed overwhelmed by the grandeur around her. The child, perhaps 10 years old, appeared to be part of a Commonwealth youth delegation, but her small frame was dwarfed by the magnificent surroundings. The girl's eyes were wide with wonder, but Sophie could see something else there too, a mixture of nervousness and excitement that reminded her of her own early days as a royal family member. The child kept looking around as if trying to take in every detail, clearly understanding the importance of the moment, but perhaps feeling slightly lost in the immensity of it all. This observation would prove to be the beginning of something that would capture the world's attention, though Sophie had no way of knowing it at the time. Her natural instinct to notice and care for others was simply part of who she had become over her years of royal service. The formal ceremony continued with its prescribed rituals and ancient traditions, but somewhere in the back of her mind, Sophie was already thinking about how to make this overwhelming moment more manageable for a young person experiencing it for the first time. The coronation proceeded with flawless precision, each element unfolding exactly as it had been rehearsed and planned. Yet within that perfectly orchestrated ceremony, the seeds of a spontaneous moment of human kindness were already being planted, waiting for the right moment to bloom into something that would remind the world of the power of simple compassion. As the coronation ceremony reached its most solemn moments, the atmosphere in Westminster Abbey became increasingly intense. The ancient ritual of crowning was unfolding with all its traditional magnificence, and every person present could feel the weight of history being made. Sophie continued to observe the young girl she had noticed earlier, and her maternal instincts grew stronger with each passing moment. The child, whose name was later revealed to be Amara Okonkwo from Nigeria, was part of the Commonwealth Youth Choir that had been selected to perform during the ceremony. At just 10 years old, she was the youngest member of the delegation, chosen for her exceptional voice and her representation of the new generation of Commonwealth citizens. But despite her talent and the honor of being selected, the grandeur of the occasion was clearly overwhelming for someone so young. Sophie watched as Amara tried to maintain her composure while seated among the other choir members. The little girl's hands were clasped tightly in her lap, and she kept glancing around the abbey with an expression that mixed awe with anxiety. The elaborate ceremonial dress she wore, while beautiful, seemed to emphasize just how small and vulnerable she appeared in such a vast and formal setting. During the quieter moments of the ceremony, when the Archbishop spoke about the monarch's duty to serve all people of the Commonwealth, Sophie noticed that Amara's eyes had begun to well up with tears. Whether from nerves, excitement, or simple overwhelm, the child was struggling to manage her emotions in this most public of settings. Sophie felt her heart go out to this young representative who was experiencing what might be the most significant moment of her life. The Duchess understood better than most how overwhelming royal occasions could be. She remembered her own first major royal event after marrying Prince Edward, when the protocol and formality had felt suffocating. Even as an adult with life experience, she had found the transition challenging. For a 10-year-old child, thousands of miles from home, the experience must have been almost incomprehensible. What happened next would become a moment that defined not just the coronation for many viewers, but also Sophie's reputation as the most approachable and compassionate member of the royal family. During a brief lull in the ceremony, as the congregation was asked to stand for a prayer, Sophie made a decision that came purely from her heart rather than any royal handbook. Breaking from the strict seating arrangement that had been planned down to the last detail, Sophie quietly moved from her designated seat. She walked with the practiced grace of someone who had attended countless formal events, but her destination was not the altar or another royal family member. Instead, she made her way to where the Commonwealth Youth Choir was seated, directly to where young Amara sat fighting back tears. The movement caught the attention of several television cameras, though the operators had no idea what they were capturing. Protocol dictated that royal family members should remain in their assigned positions throughout the ceremony unless specifically required to move for ceremonial purposes. Sophie's spontaneous action represented a departure from established practice, driven entirely by her instinct to comfort a child in distress. When Sophie reached Amara's row, she gently touched the young girl's shoulder and leaned down to whisper something in her ear. The cameras captured this moment, though the audio of their conversation was never recorded. Later interviews would reveal that Sophie had simply told Amara that she was doing beautifully and that it was perfectly normal to feel overwhelmed by such an important day. But Sophie didn't stop there. With a gesture that would be replayed millions of times on social media in the following days, she reached into her small ceremonial purse and withdrew a packet of tissues. She discreetly handed them to Amara, then remained beside her for several more minutes, providing the kind of steadying presence that only comes from someone who truly understands what it feels like to be in the spotlight. The exchange was brief, lasting no more than 3 or 4 minutes, but its impact was immediate. Amara's posture straightened, her tears ceased, and a small smile appeared on her face. Sophie's simple act of kindness had transformed a moment of overwhelming anxiety into something manageable. The little girl was able to participate fully in the rest of the ceremony, her voice clear and strong when the choir performed later in the service. What made the moment even more remarkable was how Sophie managed to provide this comfort without disrupting the solemnity of the occasion. Her movement was graceful and unobtrusive. Her interaction with Amara was gentle and brief, and she returned to her seat without causing any distraction from the main ceremony. It was a masterclass in how to honor both human need and formal protocol. The immediate reaction from other members of the royal family was one of quiet approval. Prince Edward caught his wife's eye as she returned to her seat, giving her a small nod that conveyed his pride in her actions. King Charles, despite being focused on his own overwhelming moment, later mentioned that he had been aware of his sister-in-law's gesture and was deeply moved by her compassion. But Perhaps the most significant reaction came from the other young people in the choir. They had witnessed their youngest member struggling with the enormity of the moment, and they had seen a member of the British royal family step away from protocol to offer comfort. For many of them, this single gesture changed their entire perception of what royalty meant and how it could be expressed through simple human kindness. The moment was captured by multiple camera angles, providing different perspectives on the interaction. Some showed Sophie's approach and the gentle way she bent down to Amara's level. Others captured the young girl's face as she received the tissues and the comfort they represented. Still others showed the broader context of the ceremony continuing around them, demonstrating how Sophie had managed to provide help without disrupting the historic proceedings. Social media managers and news editors around the world would soon recognize that they had captured something special, though the full impact wouldn't become clear until the ceremony concluded and the footage began to be analyzed. What they had documented was not just a moment of kindness, but a perfect example of how authentic human connection could exist within even the most formal and traditional settings. The remainder of the ceremony proceeded smoothly, with Amara participating confidently in the choir's performance. Her voice rang out clear and true as the young people sang, and she stood tall with pride as she represented her country and her generation. The transformation was visible to anyone who had been watching her earlier struggle, and it served as a powerful testament to the impact that a simple gesture of understanding and support could have. For Sophie, the moment represented something she had always believed about royal service. While the pomp and ceremony had their place in maintaining tradition and dignity, the real purpose of a monarchy was to serve the people. That service could take many forms, from state visits and charity patronages to simple acts of human kindness when they were most needed. As the coronation ceremony moved toward its conclusion with King Charles officially crowned, the significance of Sophie's gesture was already beginning to ripple outward. The cameras had captured it, the witnesses had seen it, and the recipient had been transformed by it. What remained to be seen was how the wider world would respond when they learned about this moment of compassion that had occurred within one of the most formal and traditional ceremonies in the world. Within hours of the coronation ceremony ending, something unprecedented began happening across social media platforms worldwide. The footage of Duchess Sophie's gentle interaction with young Amara had been captured by multiple television networks, and astute viewers were already beginning to share clips of the moment across Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. The first post that gained significant traction came from a royal watching party in Australia. Sarah Chun, a 34-year-old teacher from Melbourne, had been hosting friends to watch the coronation when she noticed Sophie's movement during the ceremony. She quickly rewound her recording and captured a short video clip on her phone, posting it to Twitter with the simple caption, "Did anyone else see this beautiful moment?" Duchess Sophie stopping everything to comfort a crying child during the coronation. Within 30 minutes, Sarah's post had been retweeted over 5,000 times. The responses poured in from around the world as people shared their own observations of the moment and expressed their admiration for Sophie's spontaneous act of kindness. Comments flooded in praising the Duchess for prioritizing a child's well-being over strict protocol, with many noting how natural and maternal her response had appeared. Meanwhile, at the BBC's Broadcasting Centre, producers were already reviewing their footage to identify the most compelling moments from the ceremony for their post-coronation coverage. News editor James Morrison was scanning through multiple camera angles when he paused at the sequence showing Sophie's interaction with Amara. He immediately recognized the human interest potential of the moment and flagged it for further investigation. The challenge facing news organizations was that while they had clear footage of the interaction, they initially had no information about the young girl's identity or the specific circumstances that had led to Sophie's intervention. This mystery only added to the story's appeal as viewers began speculating about what had prompted the Duchess to break from protocol in such a visible way. Dr. Patricia Williams, a body language expert who frequently provided commentary for various news programs, was among the first professionals to analyze the footage in detail. In an interview with Sky News that evening, she pointed out several significant aspects of the interaction that had impressed her. She noted how Sophie had approached at a Mars eye level, demonstrating respect for the child's dignity, and how she had maintained appropriate physical boundaries while still providing clear emotional support. The story gained additional momentum when Commonwealth media outlets began investigating the identity of the young choir member. The Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation was the first to confirm that the child was Amara Okonkwo, a 10-year-old from Lagos who had been selected to represent her country as part of the Commonwealth Youth Choir. This revelation added an important dimension to the story, highlighting the international and multicultural aspects of the moment. Amara's parents, Dr. Chike Okonkwo and Mrs. Folake Okonkwo, were initially unaware that their daughter had become the center of global attention. They had watched the ceremony from their home in Lagos, proud to see Amara performing on such a significant stage, but they hadn't noticed the earlier moment when she had appeared distressed. When reporters began reaching out for comments, they were surprised to learn about Sophie's intervention and deeply moved by the Duchess's kindness toward their daughter. The story continued to evolve as more details emerged about both Amara's selection for the choir and Sophie's reputation for similar gestures throughout her royal career. Royal correspondents began digging through archives of Sophie's past public appearances, finding numerous examples of her connecting with children and ordinary citizens in ways that went beyond the typical royal walkabout protocols. Robert Hardman, a respected royal biographer, published an analysis piece pointing out that Sophie's gesture represented something significant about the evolution of the modern monarchy. He argued that while previous generations of royals had maintained more formal distance from the public, the current generation was demonstrating a more approachable and emotionally intelligent form of royal service. The international reaction varied interestingly by region and cultural context. In countries with their own monarchical traditions, such as Thailand, Japan, and Sweden, royal correspondents noted how Sophie's behavior compared to their own royal family's approaches to public interaction. Many praised her for finding a way to maintain dignity while showing genuine human emotion and connection. American media, always fascinated by British royal stories, quickly picked up the narrative and began exploring what the moment revealed about contemporary attitudes toward authority, compassion, and leadership. CNN ran a segment comparing Sophie's gesture to similar moments of spontaneous kindness by American political figures, while the New York Times published an opinion piece about how authentic emotion in public life had become increasingly rare and valuable. Social media influencers who specialized in royal content found themselves with unexpectedly viral posts as they shared their own takes on the moment. Many highlighted how Sophie's actions contrasted with stereotypes about royal coldness and formality, while others used the opportunity to discuss broader issues about supporting children's emotional well-being in high-pressure situations. The story took on additional layers when child psychology experts began weighing in on the interaction. Dr. Maria Gonzalez, a specialist in childhood anxiety and public performance, explained to various media outlets how crucial it was for children in stressful situations to receive the kind of immediate, empathetic support that Sophie had provided. She noted that the Duchess's approach had been textbook perfect for helping a child regain confidence and composure. Educational institutions around the world began using the footage as a teaching tool for discussions about empathy, leadership, and cross-cultural understanding. The moment became a case study in how small gestures could have large impacts and how genuine human connection could transcend cultural and social boundaries. Fashion and lifestyle publications found their own angles on the story, noting how Sophie had maintained perfect composure and elegance even while breaking for protocol. Her ability to move gracefully through the formal setting while focusing on human need impressed many who worked in protocol-heavy industries and diplomatic circles. The response from the Nigerian community was particularly powerful. Social media posts poured in from Nigerian citizens expressing their appreciation for how their young representative had been treated by the British royal family. Many noted that Sophie's gesture represented the kind of respectful, caring relationship they hoped to see between the UK and Commonwealth nations. Religious leaders from various denominations also commented on the moment, with many seeing it as an embodiment of fundamental spiritual principles about caring for the vulnerable and putting human need before institutional requirements. The Archbishop of Canterbury, who had officiated at the coronation, later mentioned in an interview that he had been aware of Sophie's gesture during the ceremony and had been moved by how it exemplified the spirit of service that the coronation was meant to celebrate. As the story continued to spread, it began attracting attention from unexpected quarters. Child advocacy organizations praised Sophie for modeling appropriate adult behavior when encountering a child in distress. International diplomacy experts noted how her actions had created positive feelings toward the British monarchy in Commonwealth nations, potentially having diplomatic benefits that extended far beyond the immediate gesture. The momentum building around the story was creating something unprecedented in royal coverage. Rather than focusing on fashion choices, protocol breaches, or political implications, the global conversation centered on simple human kindness and its power to transcend cultural and institutional boundaries. This narrative would soon reach levels that no one involved could have predicted, transforming a brief moment of compassion into a worldwide phenomenon that would reshape how people thought about royalty, leadership, and the importance of caring for others. By the third day following the coronation, Sophie's gesture had achieved something remarkable in the modern media landscape. It had become a genuinely positive viral story that transcended political divisions and cultural boundaries. The hashtag Sophie's Kindness have been trending worldwide, with posts in dozens of languages sharing the moment and discussing its significance. The impact extended far beyond social media buzz. UNICEF reached out to Buckingham Palace requesting permission to use footage of the interaction in their upcoming campaign about supporting children's emotional well-being during significant life events. The organization recognized that Sophie's instinctive response represented exactly the kind of immediate, empathetic support that child development experts recommended for young people facing overwhelming situations. Meanwhile, Amara Okonkwo herself was experiencing her own whirlwind of attention back in Lagos. Her school, St. Monica's Primary, had organized a special assembly to celebrate their students' participation in the historic coronation and to discuss the global reaction to her interaction with Duchess Sophie. Teachers used the moment as an opportunity to discuss themes of kindness, courage, and how to handle difficult emotions in public settings. When Nigerian television reached out to interview Amara about her experience, her thoughtful responses revealed wisdom beyond her years. She explained that she had felt scared during the ceremony because everything was so big and important, but that Duchess Sophie had made her feel safe and reminded her that it was okay to have big feelings during big moments. Her mature perspective on the experience impressed viewers and added depth to the global conversation about the interaction. The story had also caught the attention of mental health advocates who saw Sophie's response as a powerful example of emotional intelligence in action. Dr. Emma Richardson, a prominent child psychologist, wrote an article for The Guardian explaining how Sophie's approach demonstrated several key principles of supporting children through anxiety. She particularly praised how the Duchess had validated Amara's feelings rather than dismissing them, provided practical help through the tissues, and offered ongoing support by staying nearby until the child felt more confident. Educational institutions worldwide began incorporating the moment into their curriculum discussions about leadership and empathy. Harvard Business School professor Dr. Michael Chong included analysis of Sophie's gesture in his executive leadership course, using it as an example of how authentic leadership often involves setting aside formal structures when human need requires immediate attention. His students, many of whom were corporate executives, found the example particularly powerful because it demonstrated leadership principles in action rather than theory. The Commonwealth Secretariat, recognizing the positive diplomatic implications of the moment, began featuring the story in their communications about the values that united Commonwealth nations. Secretary General Patricia Scotland issued a statement noting how Sophie's gesture exemplified the Commonwealth's commitment to supporting young people and fostering connections across cultural boundaries. Religious communities also found meaningful lessons in the interaction. Pastor David Mensah of the Methodist Church Ghana preached a sermon using Sophie's gesture as an example of putting love into action, while Rabbi Sarah Goldstein at Temple Emmanuel in New York discussed how the moment demonstrated the Jewish concept of tikkun olam, or repairing the world through acts of kindness. The fashion industry took notice as well, but for reasons that went beyond Sophie's elegant appearance. Several major brands began developing campaigns around the theme of authentic moments, inspired by how Sophie's genuine response had resonated more powerfully than any calculated photo opportunity could have achieved. Marketing executives recognized that consumers were increasingly drawn to authentic human connection rather than polished promotional content. Academic researchers in various fields began studying the moment from their respective perspectives. Sociologist Dr. Jennifer Lee published a paper analyzing how the interaction challenged traditional power structures by showing a member of the aristocracy humbling herself to serve a child's immediate needs. Communications professor Dr. Robert Torres examined how the story had spread across different media platforms, noting that its authenticity had allowed it to transcend typical demographic and cultural barriers. International media continued to find new angles on the story as more details emerged about both Sophie's background and Amara's journey to the coronation. Feature articles explored Sophie's evolution from a public relations professional to a beloved royal family member known for her genuine connections with ordinary people. Other pieces focused on Amara's musical talents and her dreams of using her voice to bring people together across cultural divides. The moment had also inspired creative responses from artists and writers around the world. A children's book author in Canada began writing a story inspired by the interaction, focusing on themes of courage and kindness during important moments. A composer in Vienna started working on a piece that would capture the emotional arc of the encounter, from initial nervousness through compassionate intervention to confident resolution. Corporate leaders began referencing Sophie's gesture in speeches and presentations about leadership principles. The CEO of a major technology company used the example during a keynote address about creating supportive workplace cultures, noting how Sophie's immediate recognition of need and swift, appropriate response demonstrated the kind of emotional intelligence that effective leaders needed to develop. The story had particular resonance in Nigeria, where it was seen as a positive representation of the country's young people on the global stage. Media outlets emphasized how Amara had handled both the initial challenge and the subsequent attention with dignity and grace. Many commentators noted that the interaction had created a beautiful moment of connection between Nigeria and the United Kingdom that transcended historical complexities in their relationship. Youth organizations worldwide began using the footage in their programs about emotional resilience and peer support. The interaction provided a perfect example of how to offer help to someone experiencing difficult emotions without making them feel embarrassed or diminished. Many programs highlighted how Sophie had managed to provide support while preserving Amara's dignity and allowing her to recover her own strength. The diplomatic implications continued to unfold as Commonwealth nations' media coverage of the story remained overwhelmingly positive. Foreign ministry officials privately noted that Sophie's gesture had generated more goodwill toward the British monarchy than many formal diplomatic initiatives managed to achieve. The soft power impact of her simple act of kindness was proving remarkably effective in strengthening relationships across the Commonwealth. Television networks began producing documentary segments exploring the broader context of the moment, interviewing experts on royal protocol, child development, and cross-cultural communication. These deeper explorations revealed the multiple layers of significance in what had appeared to be a simple interaction, demonstrating how meaningful moments often contain complex social and emotional dynamics. The story had also inspired practical changes in how large events involving children were planned and managed. Event organizers began incorporating specific protocols for supporting young participants who might become overwhelmed. Recognizing that Sophie's spontaneous response represented best practices that should be systematically implemented rather than left to chance. As the global response continued to evolve, it became clear that Sophie's gesture had touched something fundamental in people's understanding of leadership, kindness, and human connection. The moment had become more than just a heartwarming story. It had become a catalyst for conversations about how to create more compassionate communities and institutions. The ripple effects of her simple act of kindness were continuing to spread, inspiring changes in how people thought about their own capacity to make a difference through small but meaningful actions. 6 months after the coronation, the impact of Sophie's gesture had evolved from a viral moment into something much more substantial and lasting. The interaction had sparked genuine changes in how institutions approached supporting young people, how media covered royal events, and how ordinary people thought about their own capacity for meaningful action in everyday life. The most tangible outcome had been the establishment of the Sophie Kindness Initiative, a Commonwealth-wide program designed to support young people participating in high-pressure cultural and ceremonial events. The initiative, developed in partnership with UNICEF and the Commonwealth Secretariat, provided training for event organizers on recognizing and addressing children's emotional needs during formal occasions. Sophie herself had become the patron of the program, though she consistently emphasized that the real inspiration had come from Amara's courage in participating despite her nervousness. Amara Okonkwo had returned to Nigeria as something of a celebrity, but her parents and teachers had worked carefully to help her process the experience in healthy ways. She continued with her music studies and had been invited to perform at several high-profile events across Africa. More importantly, she had become an advocate for other young performers, often sharing her story about how kindness from an unexpected source had helped her find her confidence during a difficult moment. The interaction had also led to significant changes in royal protocol training. Buckingham Palace had begun incorporating discussions about emotional intelligence and responsive leadership into their preparation programs for royal family members. The emphasis had shifted from rigid adherence to established procedures toward developing the judgment needed to balance protocol with human need when situations required immediate compassion. Sophie herself had found that the global response to her gesture had opened new opportunities for meaningful work. Invitations poured in from organizations worldwide, wanting her to speak about leadership, empathy, and the power of small actions to create large changes. She accepted selected engagements, always emphasizing that the real lesson of the coronation moment was not about her actions, but about the importance of staying alert to opportunities for kindness in daily life. The academic community had produced an impressive body of research inspired by the interaction. Educational journals published studies on emotional support in high-pressure environments, while leadership researchers examined the moment as a case study in authentic versus performative compassion. Business schools began using footage of Sophie's gesture as a teaching tool for courses on crisis management and emotional intelligence. Perhaps most significantly, the story had inspired countless individual acts of kindness around the world. Social media continued to feature posts from people sharing their own experiences of offering or receiving unexpected support during difficult moments. Teachers reported students becoming more attentive to classmates who seemed overwhelmed, while workplace managers described employees showing greater sensitivity to colleagues facing stressful situations. The moment had also influenced how major events involving children were designed and managed globally. Olympic organizers began implementing specific protocols for supporting young athletes dealing with performance pressure, while schools revised their approaches to helping students manage anxiety during important presentations or performances. Event planners across various industries started including emotional support specialists in their teams when children would be participating in high-profile occasions. Media coverage of royal events had shifted as well, with reporters and photographers becoming more alert to genuine moments of human connection rather than focusing exclusively on fashion choices and formal procedures. The success of the Sophie story had demonstrated public appetite for authentic emotional content over manufactured photo opportunities, leading to more nuanced and empathetic coverage of royal activities. The diplomatic benefits of Sophie's gesture continued to unfold across Commonwealth relationships. Nigerian officials frequently referenced the moment in discussions about UK-Nigeria partnerships, noting how Sophie's treatment of their young representative had symbolized the respectful collaboration they hoped to see in official relations. Similar sentiments were expressed by leaders from other Commonwealth nations, who saw the interaction as evidence of genuine care for their citizens' dignity and well-being. Religious communities had found lasting inspiration in the moment as well. Interfaith organizations began using Sophie's gesture as an example of universal spiritual principles being lived out in practical ways. The fashion industry's response had evolved beyond initial admiration for Sophie's elegant appearance during the gesture. Several major brands had launched campaigns celebrating authentic moments of human connection, recognizing that consumers were increasingly drawn to genuine emotion over polished perfection. The shift represented a broader cultural movement toward valuing authenticity in public life. Children's literature had been enriched by books inspired by the interaction, with several award-winning titles exploring themes of courage, kindness, and finding confidence during challenging moments. These stories helped young readers understand that it was normal to feel overwhelmed sometimes, and that accepting help was a sign of wisdom rather than weakness. The corporate world had embraced lessons from Sophie's gesture as well. Human resources departments began incorporating empathy training that referenced her example of immediate, appropriate response to emotional distress. Leadership development programs used the moment to illustrate how authentic care for others could strengthen rather than undermine professional authority. Youth organizations worldwide had adopted the Sophie-Amara interaction as a teaching tool for peer support programs. The moment provided a perfect example of how to offer help without making someone feel embarrassed, and how receiving support could actually enhance rather than diminish personal dignity. Many programs reported increased willingness among young people to both seek help when needed and offer support to others. The long-term impact on Sophie's own role within the royal family had been profound. She had already been respected for her dedicated service and genuine approach to royal duties, but the global response to her coronation gesture had established her as a unique voice within the monarchy. Her calendar filled with requests for engagements focusing on youth development, emotional well-being, and Commonwealth relations. Educational institutions had begun awarding honors to both Sophie and Amara for their role in creating a moment that had inspired positive changes in how society supported young people. Universities offered honorary degrees recognizing their contribution to global conversations about leadership and compassion, while youth organizations presented awards celebrating their example of courage and kindness in action. The story had also influenced policy discussions in various countries about supporting children in public life. Governments began developing guidelines for how young people should be prepared and supported when participating in significant cultural or political events. The emphasis shifted toward ensuring that children's emotional well-being was prioritized alongside the ceremonial requirements of formal occasions. 1 year after the coronation, research organizations published comprehensive studies on the global impact of Sophie's gesture. The findings revealed measurable increases in reported acts of kindness in communities worldwide, greater awareness of children's emotional needs during stressful situations, and improved protocols for supporting young people in high-pressure environments. The transformation sparked by a 3-minute interaction had exceeded anything the participants could have imagined. What began as Sophie's instinctive response to a child's distress had evolved into a worldwide movement celebrating the power of compassion to create positive change. The moment had reminded people across cultures and continents that the smallest gestures, when performed with genuine care, could generate ripple effects that transformed how communities thought about kindness, leadership, and their responsibility to support one another. As Sophie reflected on the unexpected journey that had followed her simple act of reaching out to a nervous child, she often returned to the fundamental lesson that had guided her throughout her royal service. The most meaningful moments in life often happened not during grand ceremonies or formal occasions, but in the quiet spaces between them, when one human being recognized another's need and chose to respond with open-hearted generosity. Her gesture had reminded the world that this capacity for compassion existed within everyone, waiting for the right moment to emerge and create something beautiful.